All right, so this is going to be personal finance, the 131 class. So the gist of this class, first off, like I alluded to, I do teach it twice a week. So tonight's the late class, which, whatever, they're both on the schedule, so you probably were drawn to this class for some reason. But if you can make it at 5:30 on Tuesdays, you have that option as well. Because neither class is going to be that full, so it's not a big deal. I do the same thing with my 377 classes to include finals and all that other stuff. So, just keep that in mind if it works out. And it's not, you don't have to tell me ahead of time as long as you're going to be in one of those classes. If you're going to be missing classes, then I prefer an email if you've got some legitimate reason. Otherwise, you're going to start to get pinged on attendance. The syllabus is out there. I don't know if you got a chance to look at it, but there'll be the midterm, and there will be an attendance factor. It's only 10 points. You don't need perfect attendance to get that, but you do need, maybe one miss, two misses, unless there's some issue that let me know. I don't want to get into, personalized. But again, it helps with the class because, again, we aren't teaching this distance learning. You guys can bring a lot to the class itself. So this class itself, though, is pretty good. I mean, it is not a class that's just kind of a square filler. This is something that, I don't want to be dramatic here, but could definitely change your life. I mean, in terms of things you do now, you're all going to learn. People will be, what they call financially literate by the time you retire. By the time you're old, you'll go, okay, I understand all about, stocks and bonds. And I would say anybody in this class will get to that point. But the problem is, if you get to that point and you're in your 50s, 60s, and you're just now learning those things, the time value of money, you're done. You can't get to where you need to be. But if you're young and you go, yeah, I understand a little bit, I'm going to set aside, a few bucks, then you can do major things. And we'll talk more about it. I've got a couple examples in here, but we'll have some better examples. About me, I live out in Eagle River. I've got a couple daughters. One is actually the older one now. She's down at Auburn. And younger one, she's currently in Georgia. But anyway, that's going on to Georgia this weekend, or this next couple days. The Appaloosa there, we've actually got 3 horses now. And these was, I had 6 of those at one time. Now I'm down to 3 plus a lab. But anyway, they're exceptional dogs. I don't know if you're familiar with those. I was in the military. I did 23 years. I flew F4s. I also flew Strike Eagles, but F4s are just cooler, so I put the F4 up there. My daughter in Germany. These are some more of the horses, but this doesn't even, the mare here, she had a daughter, Dakota, so there's another horse in there, and Bailey obviously has had some pups. Oh no, there's Dakota right there on the left. Yeah, but she's getting bigger all the time. All right, so enough about me. But the point is, though, that in terms of personal finance and other things, I've had my real estate license, here in Alaska for a couple, 3 years. I was worked with Remax. Did that just a little bit. But that's sort of a business that you've got to kind of reach critical mass in, in terms of devoting your a lot of time to it. Because you get folks who, in real estate, I don't know if you are familiar with the field. Does anybody do real estate? Anybody got a license?
Real estate appraisal.
Okay. Well, you would know that there's a small percentage of folks who do the friggin' business. And then the other guys are just kind of, also ran it. And I, working with the university, and I also do some consulting for a company called Booz Allen Hamilton. So, anyway, it's one of those things where if you've got that sort of dedication, you want to, considerably, you can make 300 grand easy. Well, not easy. I mean, it would be a constant work type thing. So, at some point maybe, but anyway, I've, before that, I actually did a small stint as a broker with Merrill Lynch back then. But again, kind of, you'll hear me talk through the course. I have kind of a negative connotation towards sales and those kind of folks because it wasn't as whatever. I didn't like it. There wasn't a lot of job satisfaction because we were pushing stuff like, we could have been selling cars. It really didn't matter. Just push the product, get it done. Not good. Also, I've always been involved in real estate. Though I still own a home in Germany, but I've got I had a place in Spain, and then I've got different speculative properties down in Florida still, and Missouri, and other places like that. And then I've always been kind of deep into investments, mainly on the stock side, the real estate side. Anybody here involved in? Anybody have traded options or got involved in futures or any of that kind of stuff? We won't really talk too much about the super speculative stuff because that's probably not what's going to get you that consistently long-term wealth. There's a difference between speculating and investing, and what this course is mainly going to focus on is investing. Whoops. So these are some of the learning objectives. We're going to talk about Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 tonight. So process for making personal financial decisions, setting some goals, calculating some of the factors, and time value of money, and then some of the strategies. But this is, I'm not as happy with this example. When I was pulling it out, have you ever, anybody heard of the book called like The Wealthy Barber or The Millionaire Next Door or any of these kind of, they're personal finance type books. The Wealthy Barber in particular is pretty good, but they use an interest rate of 15%, which is pretty tough to get generally. 10% is what traditionally, not every year, but on the stock market on average, 10%, and that's a pretty solid number. Here they're using an 8% number. But if you get somebody who's 20 years old, so again, probably younger than most of us, and $5,000 contribution to a Roth IRA, which is, the significance of the Roth IRA is that's going to be a tax-deferred type investment, so you aren't going to be getting dinged on it every time. So we'll talk. We'll have a whole section on that, but you aren't going to be paying the interest on those earnings each time. Anyway, 8% annual returns never touched. The 5,000 would grow to 160,000 by age 65. Again, when this person, 45 years later, what will $160,000 buy you? That's the other thing. They don't necessarily calculate inflation in this. If they wait till age 39 to do that, that 5,000 would only grow to 40,000. So you can see, if you think, well, I'll put everything off and I'll invest when I get a lot of extra money once things settle down. Things settle down, and you're going to be so far behind. If they make that 5,000 annual contribution, so now it's not just a lump sum. They do it at 8%. They'll have $1,000,009. If they wait even 5 years to start, they'd have to increase it to 7,500 to get that same amount. And if they wait till 39, they'd have to contribute. Cut it right off. Quite a bit more. Just a second. Nearly 25,000 a year. So it changes significantly, and it's something to be aware of. We'll have better examples as we go along, but you understand how compound interest works versus simple interest, right? If somebody says, I'm going to give you something simple interest, let's say, they're going to loan you, or you're going to invest. Anyway, $100 at 10% simple interest. At the end of that year, you would have $110,000. If it's compounding, that 110 that next year would be multiplied by that 10%. So that it's because that amount, that principal keeps growing, that interest rate is working on. It'll make more sense as you read through the book and look at some of the examples. So financial planning process, okay, to ensure personal economics, satisfaction. It's not all about greed. I mean, personal finance, money isn't everything, but without money, it makes life quite difficult. And especially, I'm not here to get political, but we're looking at some fairly unstable economic times, and a lot of the sort of backlog of wealth, the generations that the rich grandparents, a lot of folks, grandparents are in bad shape as the kids are. So it's that sort of safety net that we used to have out there based upon generations of success and wealth is changing quite a bit. Luckily up here in Alaska, a little bit different, a little bit better employment. So, advantage of personal financial planning: increase effectiveness, increase control, improve personal relationships, sense of freedom, financial worries. Okay, when it comes to the tests, I will have a review prior to the test, and I'm not big on sort of touchy-feely list kind of stuff. It will be more concrete, like, calculate an interest type problem. So you'll be expected to know things like, the difference between maybe different types of insurance policies. But in terms of some of these things that I'm not going to sit here and so much give you career guidance. I'm just going to tell you what is available to you in terms of personal finance if you invest properly. But in terms of getting in and telling you, I'm not doing that part, because you'll see the book kind of go off into things that are either kind of common sense or personality driven. I mean, it's your option. Anything with personal finance, and we'll talk more about this later, it all has to do with opportunity costs. So, and it's just a philosophical outlook in terms of how people get ahead, and it's not necessarily by putting huge chunks of money in. That's fun to do with the speculative stuff. I'm all about that. But in terms of regular investments that will take care of you later in life, that could be a smaller amount. But the critical thing is it needs to be consistently done, and it needs to really be done first. If you say I'm going to invest whatever's left at the end of the month, well, that's not going to work. Everybody tries that, and the people who say, okay, I'm going to take 10% from the front, that's another bill. My IRA or my investment strategy, that 10%, that's already spent, and this is what I have left to pay all my bills and do everything else. That will be successful, and long term, I mean, you'll kind of see that sort of recurring theme in the concept of paying yourself first. That's what it means. Is anybody big in personal finance? Anybody not really so much? And the other thing is, there will be a project that will be part of the course, but I realize completely the artificiality of being in college and trying to get by. I'm not saying, okay, I'm working for a minimum wage and I should be putting whatever. No, the project will be based upon the guidance, or it can also be, your own sort of strategy for 5 years out after graduation. So the important thing is I'm not trying to make people feel guilty, and that's why that example of somebody 20 years old, well, that person may not have gone to college and maybe they jumped right into a career and they're going to be working, and they're probably not going to attain the high-end salaries you guys will by having gone to college. So they have to start earlier. But anyway, what I'm saying is certainly, for a typical college student, before you're 30, should be, investing money for your retirement long-term care. And it depends on your situation too. If you're fortunate enough to be with a firm or in a chosen field that has a pension plan, then that is not such a problem. Although you see pension plans fail, and those people that's not a good situation to be in. So anyway, 6 steps for, this thing is screwing me up here. 6 steps for planning. So again, nothing cosmic about it. Determine some goals, Courses of action, evaluate the alternatives, create and implement, review. Anyway, any iterative planning process is largely going to have these same steps. You know, you come up with a plan, you implement it, and then you check it. Same. Current financial situation. We'll do some of this, but again, you know, these are sort of the tools to learn how to do this. How many folks are in this class are traditional college students, or how many are already in a career and going to school kind of nice? Going to school just kind of, yeah. So some of this may apply to you, and it is something you can be working on, because, I mean, ultimately, you know, to enjoy a successful retirement and be able to provide for your children, if that's your, you know, in your plan as well, it's going to take a certain amount of money. And the deal is that certain amount of money can be lesser if you start early, whereas if you wait till the end, you know, the kids are going to college and now you're trying to pay for it, you're either going to take loans or you're going to work real hard. So anyway, it just makes things easier if you've got a plan. This is some of the stuff about, you know, feelings about money, source and feelings about money. We all come from different backgrounds, and very, you know, in most marriages, I don't know how it works this way, but there's usually a spender, usually a saver, and you know, it's always a battle. If you can work it out, that's great. Some people don't. Some people have to go to Georgia, so there you go. Identify alternative courses of action. So, obviously, you know, the do nothing thing, we all know that is a course of action itself. If you don't do anything, you know, that's gonna have certain results. Creativity and decision making, do nothing would be dangerous alternative, obviously. So again, this first chapter here, I guess more of a fuzzy bit about, you know, people are going to do what they're going to do, and I'm not going to get up here and preach to you, but I will tell you that, you know, the opportunity cost, the trade-off cost, it is, you know, it is what it is. There are certain things that you don't necessarily need to give up, but you do need to kind of get a handle on in terms of some of the extraneous spending that ends up on credit cards, and also now you aren't able to invest, and that's what kind of happens. So when we're talking opportunity cost, you know, the new snow machine versus, you know, the 2-year-old model, and, you know, $50 a month into your, you know, savings plan thing. It's all about choices. A lot of times you can kind of, you know, you can always kind of have it. Whenever in Europe, I spent probably 12, 15 years altogether in Europe, and I always had, you know, like Dodge Vipers and Corvettes and stuff like that. But they were never brand new, and I never sold one for less than I bought it for. I mean, so it was great. It didn't cost me much. But real estate, I mean, we're talking some serious money there. I was very serious about that. But again, and there is some luck involved. I got out of Spain before that whole thing toppled. I would be, I don't know where I'd be right now if I rode that one out. But again, you'll come across situations like this in your life. You know, people are saying, "Oh, you need to rent your house in Spain. The market's going up." I'm like, no, this cannot last. And it's kind of like the stock market today. I don't know if anybody's deeply invested in that, but at some point, you know, when the wheels come off the bus, it's going to be ugly. But people will make money when it all flattens out. Create and implement your financial plan. So develop an action plan, possible actions, implement the actions. They really aren't talking about what the actions are, but we will talk about that in subsequent chapters. Again, the review, the revise. It is good to have, you know, somebody else involved in this whole process in terms of a professional. But again, you know, the options in terms of if you would have come to me, you know, when the whole Merrill Lynch thing was going on, I was not an unbiased, good, advisor. I would be churning your stocks, buying and selling stuff and directing you to stuff that was, that I was directed to direct you to. So somebody who's on commission, who's on a vector like that, probably not good. But there are independent folks who do financial planning, financial advising. But again, they're going to deal with higher net worth individuals normally. So there are other things that you can do on your own there with other companies, primarily like mutual fund companies that really don't have the commissions, don't have the high pressure sales, and have more kind of do-it-yourself kind of tools. They're a little bit less biased because it's a competitive world out there, and they want you to do well so that you stay with them. So there are ways around it, but this review bit, eventually you would like to get to a point where you've got another set of eyes, somebody who you're paying just directly for advice, and who doesn't have an interest in selling you anything. They just want to do what's best for you. So the time frame and what the financial goals are. I mean, again, there's different sorts of, if like mutual fund type things, there's a lot of these, they're funds that are developed to mature out at a certain time based upon typically upon your retirement. So, they're talking like 2025 for this one fund I have at the university, and it invests in certain more aggressive stocks now, and then theoretically, I'm not going to retire, but it would get to more conservative funds that are more income driven at a later point. So that would be a sort of a time frame goal. And then the other one is, by the need that drives your goals. So again, college, children, things like that. Most of this investing, again, we're talking long-term type stuff. I mean, I love to do short-term, speculative, penny stocks and stuff. And my daughter going to Auburn, I mean, with the market going the way it is, we've done real well with stupid stuff, Buffalo Wild Wings, and I've been in and out of Twitter a few times. And has anybody bought any Bitcoins? I mean, we're talking just stupid. It's foolish investments followed by more foolish investments. But it's not investments. Those are speculative things. True goal-driven investments are a bit more serious, because that's money you can't stand to lose. These other ones you can. Short-term goals, long-term goals. Again, if it's going to affect what your investments are going to be in. If you've got long-term goals, there's certain grades, certain types of investments that you can get into, and actually they're the more speculative ones, because if things take a dive, since you're such long-term, it will recover. And that's when I say the stock market makes, rule of thumb, on average 10%. Well, but if you jump in and take a snapshot, it could be 34% like we did this year, more or less, or it could be a nosedive as it did back in 2007, 2008. So you would not want to be in a short-term type goal for that type of situation. So the goals, again, the SMART acronym: specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-based. So, again, not going to delve too much into what your goals would be. I mean, some of these things: marital status, household size, employment. There's lots of things that happen in life, and depending upon how you prepare for it, will change things. Economic factors. One of the things right now, I mean, like I said, the stock market is going through the roof, but it's not necessarily due to the companies doing very well. A lot of it there's QE2, quantitative easing. What happens is basically the Fed is pushing money into the market, so it's artificially bringing it up. When that stops, things go haywire. So there was a new Fed chairman. Oh, she was just put in last week, but she's been Yellen, and she's all about pumping. So stock markets continue to go until it's because it's money from nowhere. So it's kind of a dicey proposition. But anyway, at this point, there's no tapering really on the horizon. Global influences, even more so now. The U.S. in the prominent role is diminished a bit. Global marketplace. I have friends who are very, very concerned about the Chinese economy in terms of, if their economy starts to contract, it could be very, very bad on the global side. The currency transactions, we're pretty much immune to most of that. We don't have the huge swings, the inflationary type things that we have in other countries. I was in Turkey for 3 years or so, and basically annually they would come out and add a few zeros onto or take a few zeros off of the bills. If you were holding cash in Turkey, it was very much a problem. I had the offer to buy some real estate there, a condo. It was actually a condo that I had a lease on, and anyways, it was only $35,000, which not bad, 3-bedroom kind of place. But the first earthquake is going to be completely level, and you're going to be in amongst the rubble. So not a good idea. But anyway, the currency risks with that and the banking, the fluctuations were more than you'd want to handle. Other economic conditions. So consumer prices, consumer spending, all the different items. The one thing that the government can really control is the stock market by pumping some money in there. So that can, a lot of these other numbers are kind of not very favorable right now, but the stock market continues to grow. This is just something to show, like the unemployment numbers. What's been happening is the reason why unemployment numbers are going down is because the labor participation rate is going down. So the number of people participating, so the number of jobs relative to the labor pool, and that's what's happening right now. But that's not good for the economy. To be taking people out of the labor force, it's artificially pumping it up. If you had the same labor force that they had in 2008, real unemployment would be about 11%. So it's kind of scary. So some of those numbers can be manipulated, and that's not good. But again, this was an election year, so things will probably continue to eke up because nobody wants anything bad to happen. In every financial situation, obviously, all those rules that show the vast amounts of money you can make with compound interest, well, you can also pay that compound interest by running up credit card debt. So, although, I think it's pretty ambitious to say that you can get 12-15% on investments, you can certainly pay that in credit cards. So, and again, any investment plan, again, you're in the situation you are, but before you can get real serious about investing, the first step should be to get rid of that sort of debt, the consumer debt. The difference, and I'm not, against credit. I mean, loans and all that other stuff in terms of leverage and real estate, it's all necessary. Debt is not necessarily bad, but consumer debt on credit cards, it's pretty much bad, because home mortgage debt on your primary home or your secondary home is deductible. So when you do get to the point where you're making some decent money, especially if you're doing something where you're working for the government or something else, it's one of the few tax breaks you have. So the ability to deduct that interest, like I do on my German home and my home here is huge. So, and the ability to control that much real estate for a small amount of money, the leverage factor on there is huge. You know, for example, I don't know how much Spain, it was probably, I bought it, well, it's in euros, maybe $300,000. And I was pouring $50,000 into it. And it was going up by 15% a year. So I had that 45,000 into this house and it appreciated by a lot over the course of 3 years. You know what I mean? So the leverage factor on that, because the $300,000 was what was increasing by 15%. So 300 times 15 is 45 a year. So I mean, you can see what happens, and all of a sudden that 40,000 I have into it is not significant. So anyway, the other thing about real estate and property like that is the ability to not have to pay taxes on the capital gain if you meet certain conditions, like a living in it for those throughout our last 5 years. We'll go into the rules on what it is with capital gains, but that is again one of the few instances where the profits you can actually retain them totally, as opposed to if that investment was in stocks or something, you'd have to pay tax on those profits. So, again, getting a bit ahead of myself, but it'll make more sense as we go. So this is sort of the scale thing, and this is what I was talking about. Financial acquisitions. We're talking the snow machine over here. And opportunity cost, time, health, interest, safety. That's kind of a screwy scale, though. And I'm looking more at the discretionary spending versus the investments. But that's the primary trade-off we're talking about. So opportunity cost is giving up something for something else. Time value of money. So any of those curves, any of those calculations, there's definitely a trade-off. The way they calculate interest rates, if somebody says, "Oh, I'm getting 20%," well, I'd be a little nervous. You know what I mean? The reason why you're getting 20% is because it's a competitive world, and if somebody has to pay 20% to entice you to cover that loan is probably pretty questionable. So people who get involved in these, investment schemes, and they're making huge amounts of money, and all of a sudden they lose it all. It's like, well, I mean, you can get ripped off on any investment scheme, but if you're getting, say, 20% of that interest, there's probably a problem there. There are some deals out there, though. There's a friend of mine who, again, he did just personal loans to a used car dealer when we were in flights for a long time ago. He made 20%, but that poor guy who was buying those used cars, he must have been paying like 25% because my buddy Mike got interest every year. This friend of mine, Mike, he's the guy who's involved in the real estate down in Florida, and he and I have been partners on a couple of projects. And he has done very well and escaped the carnage that happened down there when the market tumbled. This is the other thing you have to look at is the true investment rate when you subtract inflation from it. So people say, I don't want any sort of risky investments. I'm gonna stick with some sort of government-backed securities. I'm gonna get 1%, 2%. Well, if inflation on these different years is somewhere above 2%, you're not even preserving the capital you have. So you're not necessarily making money. Inflation is eating it up. And these are not super inflationary times. Back in the when was it? That was 79. Just right before that. I mean, interest rates on housing were high as 18%. 15%. I mean, it just shut down the market. People were, inflation was incredible. So people have short memories when it comes to that stuff. So interest calculations, 3 different amounts to use. Anybody working any sort of mortgage type investment? What do you guys do? Do you work in business type stuff, or?
I'm an accountant, technician at DEC.
DEC is.
Department of Environmental Conservation.
Okay. Anybody else with a business type stuff? No, not so much.
I work for the purchasing department
For which company?
at AH.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, well, anyway, I mean, you're all going to come across this whether you're involved in it, here in courses or, later in your careers, or if you're purchasing anything, but you're pretty familiar with it. Principal, interest rate, and the time value. Those are the 3 things you need for calculations. Simple interest, like I said, if it's just simple, it's just going to be calculated once there. So, 5% simple interest would be $5 at the end of the year. So it doesn't get much easier than that. They also have tables, usually, or calculators, or different programs, applications, where you can calculate things to a future value of a single amount or a future value of a series of deposits. So sort of in that example where I said they put, 5,000 down and they leave it till 865, that is a single amount. Or series of deposits, those annual deposits, different types of tables we use for that future values. So the future value of that 5,000 in this case was, what we say, 160,000. You can work that backwards. You can also say the present value of a single amount. So you could get that same 160,000, and you could look back to it of discounting, and you can say, okay, given that number of years, 45 years, that discount's down to $5,000. And same thing with a series of projects. So again, that part is not too hard. It's just the the people who are good at this, especially in real estate. There's some people that are phenomenal, and believe me, I wasn't intimidated, but these people were smart, and you're very. In fact, some of the best were. They were so into it because a lot of them didn't necessarily have a college degree, and they were making pretty good money, so there's not a lot of other fields for them, and they were going to do what was necessary to keep in that same income bracket, and fairly vicious when it gets to competitive business dealings. Anyway, but they were sharp, and they would eat people alive. You did not understand that. People who were not good at math, they were just particular players. Because I was a new guy, kind of taken under the wing, and saw how they operated. It was amazing. Lots of amazing. Methods for computing time value of money. So nothing new. I mean, you guys are familiar with this. Not too many people doing it through a formula. Most of it's done through an app or a table. Again, that same example of compound interest. So in terms of achieving financial goals, we're going to go through these throughout the course. Planning will basically be earning it, planning, saving, borrowing, spending, managing risk, things like insurance, and then investing. And investing is, we'll definitely spend some time on that part of it, because that's kind of the key. Because then you realize what's out there, and it sort of motivates you. I mean, that's why I didn't mean to shock you that I made stupid investments throughout my life, but when it comes to buying a snow machine or putting it in some government security, that's not quite as thrilling. But putting it in some penny stock for some movie that's come out, and crazy schemes. And we made lots of money on some, and lots of money on others. But in the bigger scheme, I always kept that separate from traditional retirement type investment, which is what you need to do. Flexible financial plan. So again, this is for your own use. you don't necessarily need to have some fancy typed up project. But what you will do in terms of the project for this class is you will come up with a project. If you look on in the syllabus, it describes a little bit about it. My intent is not to get into your financial chili. It's just for you to think about some things, and when you're faced with these decisions, in the next 10 years, you go, oh yeah, this is why I should be maxing this out. And some of the things are just so simple. I've had previous students who had employers that were offering matching on certain investments. You put down a little bit and they match it. Well, you really need to max those out. That is kind of a no-brainer. If they're going to match you 5% in retirement type stuff, you need to scrimp and save and do what you can to put that amount in to at least get that match. That is such a no-brainer. It's like making an extra, whatever your salary is, that extra percentage each year. In the university, it'll be like 1%.
It's 12.
12 days. Silly. You work for the university? What do you do? Oh, okay. Is it? Crushing. Just soul crushing. I was watching Office Space this week, and that is just my favorite movie. It's just like so many. What is it you do? Yeah, I love that. Man, it's not meant to. I know. And then I went to Outback Steakhouse because I found their Aces game, and they had the free tickets, and all these guys are walking around, and they're all chipper, and they got their flair on. You've all seen Office Space, right? It's fantastic. The Bobs. I love that show. I've worked in that environment so much. Cubicles and all that, yeah. Too much. Okay. Good financial habits, appropriate insurance, forward about investments. Insurance is, insurance doesn't need to be complex. You look at what you need to insure and you just buy that portion. These complex insurance products, nobody really recommends those. So don't get too wrapped up about whole life and this life and universal life. We'll discuss them just so you know what it is, but they're usually high commission and they aren't basically good investments. So we'll take a break right now though, and then we'll come back. The standard for this thing will be, probably about 2 hours. So we'll do like a chapter, probably go about this long. We'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back. Tonight's going to be a little quicker, because I'm not in a hurry. It's like 2:40 in the morning. But some of the stuff in terms of telling you, how to save your money and what to do. I'm just going to kind of lay it out there, but I'm not going to preach to you. Yes, please.
Can you have the return date? It's not on your syllabus.
I didn't put it on there. No. Yeah. I've got to convert that part of the syllabus. What happened was, I need to make that correction, because it was distance learning, where I brought that in from, so they just kind of had to do it as an aside, and now it needs to be plugged in. But it will be, I'll look at the syllabus, I'll plug it in real quick. Good catch. Very good catch. Anything else? Okay, we'll see you in about 10 minutes. Hopefully people aspire to do what they want to do because, there's some sort of calling to it or whatever. Or you could be just, looking at something that's going to give you the greatest return, whatever, motivates you in life. I'm not going to try and tell you, one way or another. But career activities associated with career planning, evaluate factors for employment, and analyze techniques. Anyway, most of you, obviously some of you have already kind of got your chosen career, and others of you are going to sort that out at some point. But anyway, from a personal finance perspective, I can tell you what's worked for me, what I've seen work for other folks, but hopefully you're all aspiring to a career, something that is more than just a job. And there's a lot that entails trade-offs, between work life. You know, at one point, the military was a great thing. I mean, I had several jobs before, like I said. I had, in fact, the first time I worked for a university, it was a great job. It was too good a job. I was in charge of other activities for the campus, and I was, barely out of college. But that's when I thought, you know what, I can only fly for a certain length of time. So initially, I got into the Air Force to fly. Later on, I did, logistics and more business-oriented type things, and then, I got my MBA and worked on my doctorate and all that. But anyway, that career, that ship has kind of sailed. There's not too many folks, unless you're really drawn to it, that I would recommend going to the military. Is anybody here in the military? No? Oh, you are? What do you do? Oh, okay. How long you been in? How long, you'll think you'll stay, or?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Well, good on you. Yeah, because, it's probably stabilized a lot in terms of deployments and things like that, too.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's cool. Congratulations. Yeah, I did, a bunch of time in Afghanistan. In fact, that's really where I worked on a lot of my doctoral stuff, because other guys were involved on, like, typing on blogs and things like that. This is such a waste of time. Because the whole, any kind of wartime type thing for what I was doing was, hours of boredom and then, minutes of sheer terror. But anyway, that boredom part, I've worked on other things, but benefits and all that other stuff, it should work out, and hopefully, things will stabilize in terms of lifestyle. So, career training, skill development, obviously technical general skills. Again, that ship has sort of sailed. Most of you have decided what you're going to do in terms of your training. Most of you, by virtue of going to college, you're getting a little bit more general. You aren't going to rely on technical skills or the technical skills or the mechanical skills, especially, will be valuable as a background. They have all sorts of aptitude tests to figure out what it is you should be doing. But again, you kind of drive to what works out for you. Some of the stuff can be taken to such a level and lead to some awful conclusions. In Germany, for example, you would think Germany has a great school system. Well, what they do is they track people very early on, like we're talking junior high. And a good friend of mine, the guy is incredibly wealthy. And he's trained as a mechanic because his dad was a mechanic. Well, his dad owned real estate on both sides of the streets and made a killing, and they bought all kinds of real estate and stuff. But the poor Thomas, he has no skills at all. He can't type. He can't do any of that because he was sent to a trade school because that's what they decided. There was no sort of aptitude test. It was just like, Dad's a mechanic, you're going to be a mechanic. Good luck. And now the guy, I actually bought the house from the guy. And the guy, there was a Lamborghini and a Ferrari in the same. He had always had these real flash cars, but in terms of education, he never went to gymnasium, their equivalent of a professional type high school, and certainly no college. So this sort of stuff, though, there are some. If you're truly undecided on what you want to do, still there are aptitude tests that will hopefully give you some direction in SWOT analysis. You can use that on a lot of things, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, stuff, where you just sort of categorize things to evaluate different options. The same sort of planning model works for anything. You come up with a plan, you work on it, and then you evaluate. It's always that sort of assessment cycle that starts again with another action. Industry trends, economic conditions. There's certain things certain areas that are always going to be growth, but other type things like heavy manufacturing, probably not coming back in the United States anytime soon. There's a couple of factors. The corporate tax is too high for that kind of investment in the low-wage countries. If it does come back, it will be in highly automated manufacturing. But anyway, most of you probably already have an idea of which direction you plan to go. Working parents, longer lifespans, employment training. The longer lifespans is relevant though to personal finance, because the amount of money people used to save with the expectation of, retirement, people live longer. But what's changed also in that is the expectation of people working longer. A lot of people work 67, there's a lot of times you can't draw benefits until then and other things. Also the fact, like Social Security, for example, it's going to be means tested here within the next couple of years, so most of us will probably never draw Social Security if we have any sort of other income. So it's not something that will necessarily factor, or something you definitely wouldn't want to count on. Career opportunities affected by high interest rate, price increases, and then again, that's the overall health of the economy. I mean, obviously the economy right now is not strong, but things can certainly change, and there's always going to be sectors, and in Alaska especially, should have a bit of a buffer, which, industries, overall, I mean, that is correct, it's service industry, but that's just the way things have changed, You didn't necessarily need to be that brilliant to figure out that manufacturing was going down and services would take up a lot of the slack. Training, again, most of you are aware of this kind of stuff. The internships, sometimes those are a bit overused. A lot of companies get a lot of free labor, but it can work. Career skills from different projects. Career information sources, you guys are much more familiar with the internet than the authors are. You know what's out there, what's available. I mean, there's still a lot of scams out there, but things like, LinkedIn now, and other, reputable sort of online job sites are out there. Realistically, though, things like LinkedIn and all those other things, it just comes basically back down to basically networking. And I don't mean networking on computers, but networking with your friends. That's where most of the better jobs come from. So there's a number of students that I'm on LinkedIn with, and a lot of friends of mine still from Europe. But anyway, we can all work out. And there's, unemployment, especially here in Alaska, it's pretty low for people who don't have, some sort of unemployable issue, in terms of some sort of substance abuse or something like that. People that are ready to work and able-bodied, it's mostly unemployment is just transitional. People going from one job to the other. But it's hard to get valid statistics on that. From German examples, I've worked with a lot of German contractors, and the first question always was, do we need a receipt for this project? And you're like, well, anyway, what that question meant was, is this going to be on the books, or is this going to be done under the table? If it's done under the table, all these guys' workers are still going to be drawing their unemployment and working for you, so they can work at a better price. But you don't want to be involved in those sort of scams. So you say, no, I won't need a receipt, and that was code word for, do it all under the table. So those numbers can be manipulated quite a bit. Employment search strategies. Again, this varies, and it even varies on what your particular field is. I mean, if you're going to some sort of art-related type field, I mean, there's going to be a whole different set of expectations, and what would work in a resume for some sort of creative type position, vice what would work in some sort of engineering field. So again, it's hard to give you a one-size-fits-all. I've never had any luck with employment agencies. I mean, there's good companies that are going to look for people directly. Has anybody ever gotten a job through an employment agency? Yeah. What'd you think of it overall? Scam, huh? Yeah. Well, I once took a job through a temp agency, but this temp agency had actually worked as basically that's how this company did their hiring. They would hire people in temporarily without any commitment to them. They'd see how they work, and if you were a good guy, then they would, ask you to come on full time. For them, that's kind of like a filtering thing. And the big boys like UPS and FedEx and stuff will do that stuff. They don't hire people typically other than the Christmas season. They'll bring people in during the rush season, and they'll pick out those top performers, and those guys stay, and the rest of you this is just temporary work for you, right? But you were working for the agency itself, huh?
Yeah, it was a recruiter, so between the workers and the businesses, I was the
Yeah. Was it a good deal for anybody?
It could be, I suppose, for businesses when you have the resource to do the recruiting and doing on their own in smaller firms, it could be
Yeah.
valuable to them, but I don't know, a lot of times it's not necessary, especially for companies who know what they're looking for.
And who was paying the fee? The new guy, the employee, or was it the company paying him?
It would be a good company.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I did get a job offer. They wanted me to go to Yemen and work on equipment on them. And this was back before Yemen was really a hotspot. But my undergrad was actually in agricultural engineering, so I was a pretty good mechanic on equipment, Caterpillar stuff. And the Russians, they had copied. They ordered a few Caterpillars, just a couple, and then took them apart, casted them, and they've been driving Caterpillar tractors ever since, just exact copies. And so that's what Yemen was full of all these things. But there was too many things, other things involved in it, and the money was not that good. Anytime they offered, like I got an offer for, this was 2 years ago when I was in Afghanistan, they wanted me to go to Quetta, Pakistan, for $300 grand a year. And I'm like $100,000 a year kind of guy. Maybe in a hostile place, maybe 200. But 300, that's pretty hostile. That's a lot of hostile fire play. Somebody's gonna end up dead in this situation, so I back on that one. But anyway, resumes, cover letters. This whole thing is such an art, and it really depends on the person. Oh, it all needs to be on one page. Oh no, it needs to be multiple pages. And then the government thing, that's a whole different side. It's just crazy. I have veterans preference that actually worked against me because they had too many veterans apply. I mean, you need to network. You need to find people who are there. The one good thing, and I think they mentioned it, or I mentioned it on the slides, is a thing called an informational interview. So, like, soon, before you actually want to go work for a company, ask for like an informational interview where you aren't trying to get a job, but you want to find out more about the company. Because once you try and get the job, now there's all these legal obligations between you and the employer, and there's, the guards are up in case they don't give you the job, and everybody's going to be very guarded on what they say. But if you just go there as an informational interview, or an intern is not better, or not as bad, is also good. As an intern, so you kind of get to see the company more long term. But an informational interview, you can do that with almost any company. And you just say, I'd like to see more about your operation. I'm going to UAA, and I want to see what part of my classes I can apply to maybe future work here. But there's no expectation that they're giving you a job right then. Anyway, that's where you get to actually figure out whether you actually want to maybe work for this company, and you also get a better picture of the company. Because when you're actually in a formal interview process, it's very scripted. Everybody's got to be treated the same way. It's very hard to get any information on the actual company. Factors affecting salary, which is funny. I was actually hired to work in Stuttgart, and I thought I was staying in Germany. It was fine. And I was coming to Alaska. This was when I started to move down. This was 4 or 5 years ago. And I thought, well, Alaska's got fairly high costs. I'll get more money up there, right? In the military, and I'm like, no, people want to go to Alaska. We pay them less. Iowa will pay you a lot more money. So it's completely the opposite. The cost of living had nothing to do with it. It was an inverse relationship. So anyway, but again, these things are kept very quiet by the employer. You won't find out, and then, technically I could be fired for saying how much I make to another prospective employer. But I had a buddy, and he helped me out, and he said, ask for this. And it was on the high end, and they got it, but it was, I could tell I made them nervous, which was good. I extracted as much as I possibly could from them. So, again, a little intel, but again, you get the internet now. There's sites called Glassdoor and other things, and people will fess up. Although, Booz Allen, you guys probably have never heard of it until Snowden. You guys do know about Snowden, right? Edward Snowden. And he was a Booz Allen guy. He claimed he made $200,000 and no college, no nothing. The dude was very smart, but he wasn't doing $200,000. Anyway, we don't do that kind of work. Or I never did that kind of work. Non-salary benefits, lots of things. We talked a little bit about some of the matching policies, but also cafeteria-style type benefits. What they do now is where you sort of pick and choose rather than have a benefits package. You choose the items you want. Much more popular. Flexible spending accounts, medical. A lot of times due to income, you don't qualify for those. Competitive job benefits, market values, and is the company, up and coming employment rights. If you're going to a company that you have to consider employment rights. Anyway, probably not a good choice. I've always worked for some of the better companies. I never had any problems with any rights type issues. Techniques for career growth. You'll set this early on, and me giving you this list today is probably not going to change. Communicate well with others. This isn't third grade, you guys learn how to play well with other children on your own. Stages of career development. Yeah, I'll march on through it. Again, the scope of this course is personal finance, so I'm not gonna delve too much into how things go. But this whole thing too, or this expectation of, this is your career and this is how you march through. Number one, that doesn't happen much anymore, and number two, it'd be very boring to get that same job. Because that's when I went to work for a university the first time. I said, there's got to be more life than this, because I never would have got to travel, never would have done anything, So I would mix it up a little bit, and if you always do a good job, things will take care of themselves. Training opportunities. A lot of times this sort of will be forced upon you. As a real estate guy, I still carry my license, so I have to. Annual training. I have different trainings I have to do to keep current and doing. I do a lot of strategic consulting, the same thing. There's it's the same concepts, but the buzzwords change every year, so you stay current in the field and you're able to kind of talk the talk. A mentor. I don't know. They talk about this in the Air Force and other places, but it's good if it actually happens. A lot of times it's kind of, the old boy network. Oh, he's not my grandpa, he's my mentor. And it's like, that's why I'm sending you to somebody. I don't know. It always smells like a rat when people start talking about mentors, because it depends. There could be unique situations, but from the mentors I've seen, it was, it'd go by nepotism or some other name. Changing careers, and now they kind of talk about it, and that's even, the stigma of switching from one career to another is not that big. Booz Allen, they vest you after 5 years, so most companies, if you're staying with a company 3 to 5 years, a lot of times that's the way it works. Things move on, and their needs change, and your needs change, and off you go. Cope with job termination. Well, again, life skills. I'm not here to counsel on this stuff. Make sure you eat and sleep, and anyway. But from a personal finance perspective, eventually, you don't want to necessarily be working for money. You want money working for you. So you want to get to the point in your life where, what, I'm done. I can live, off of whatever. In my case, I've got like a military house, and I when I had enough, I'm done. And hopefully, you know, Jody will get to that point and be able to have options and not be forced into some job that you don't want to do because, you know, you're up your head in credit card debt and you have to say no. That's when, you know, that's when personal finance does create a factor. And all the time of sleep you the tricky is just going to make you more aware of it. You know what I mean? That's the, anyway. Enough of that. Resume. Look online, look what's popular in your field, and don't, you know, go with a one-size-fits-all. Different ways to do it. A lot of times the strategy has to do with highlighting your strengths and you know, kind of considering your weaknesses. So, anyway, people will use, you know, chronological, functional to try and highlight their key things. Also, this keyword search is critical. It's always been critical in government, but in private sector, you know, if it's a federal resume, well, in large companies, you won't get even human eyes on your resume if it doesn't have enough keywords on it, you know. So this whole one-size-fits-all where you send out one resume to all these things, you need a job announcement, you need to get those words, you need to place them somewhere in your resume. And that's why this whole one-page resume really won't work. You need, you know, multiple pages, and I've seen in the resumes with sort of chunks of just kind of key words, because it'll get the computer just to score you very high, and then somebody actually looks at it, and anyway, you gotta get looked at. You can get chucked out electronically quite easily. Yeah, whoops, what's going on? That has, yeah, that limits your resume to one page. That's why my credibility with these guys in terms of resume writing went way down. Because if you've got a reasonable amount of experience, you can't really get it on one page. And if you did, you still can't really be able to cram enough keywords in there to get past the electronic score.
On the resume, wouldn't you really want to have what applies to the job you want to get?
Yeah, target a resume.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are certain, you know, there are certain things, like in strategic communications, for example, you know, that whole concept of like public relations and messaging, and you could be applying for this, you know, public information officer position or something with a company, but if they're calling it public information, you're calling it strategic communication, you know what I mean? It's you've got to use the language that's in the job announcement, is what I'm saying. Yeah. And then also, I don't use cover letters. Other people do it, but I've never been a big fan of cover letters. I would rather put that time that I do in the cover letter into that opening block of the resume and make that sort of a one, you know, standalone thing, because cover letters don't generally go to any sort of board that's going to evaluate resumes, but the resume does generally. Now, if it's a government type thing, then they're standardized resume and it's about a bunch of numbers. Does anybody have any experience with resumes? Anything that's worked for them? Not? Sure.
Well, I've done a handful of resumes myself, but also one of the jobs that I have in my company is I have to reformat everybody's resume into a company template.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was a template partially designed by myself and a few other admins, and that is for our industry, and with surveying and engineering, it's more project specific. So like, I don't want your chronological history of where you worked. I want to know what key projects you worked on with places like Continental Buildings, and such. So it can turn into a 6-page ordeal pretty quickly.
Yeah.
With somebody who's been in the industry for a very long time, but in all the resumes that I've ever gone through, I've seen maybe 2 cover letters. Still.
Yeah.
Like they're the worst.
I don't, but why wouldn't you provide the people sort of a template to fill in rather than create you all this work? It seems like if you're going to read,
It's
you know.
field through work. If I send out the template to them, if they're not offered an incentive to do it, like this is a paid hour of your day, it's never going to come back.
Oh, okay.
So it turns into a downtime work for me.
Who you work for?
I work for very small of Peter, but we're
Yeah.
getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and you worked on, somebody else had their hand up on resume.
Well, mostly, part of my job is where I work, I have to review everybody's resumes. And so I see a whole bunch of like different kinds come through the office, and then we actually do require cover letters where I work.
Yeah, it's, I guess it just depends. I've got, with Word and all that, it's not nearly the pain it used to be. I mean, I'm not saying that typewriters and stuff, but WordStar, some of the more primitive word processing things are such a headache to even manipulate stuff on. Now, with people being much more tech savvy and having much better applications, the expectation for kind of a customized resume is out there. But anyway, and again, the informational interviews are because it's much better to walk into a company rather than race through college, get to the end, and then okay, now I got to get a job. It's much better to transition to something you've already sort of lined up, and you can do that in some fairly low threat environments. And you can also, I had so many part-time jobs when I was young, but I know that the grass has been greener than some other thing. I've done mechanic stuff, I've done every type of retail type stuff, and I have a little bit of an idea of what all those things entail, and it's made for a much more enjoyable life for me because I know, I really didn't want to do that. This is a good gig, and it worked out for me. I mean, fine, jumbo. So, but anyway, it you gotta get there. There's something else I said about job interviews. Again, to walk into a cold interview is tough, and I've had to do interviews on Skype and other things, and it can be difficult, but anyway, it's still part of the process. It's much easier to talk about a strong resume though than to be tap dancing about something you really aren't qualified for. So again, a little bit of preparation ahead of time and researching on the internet. You can even find out what some of the interview questions would be. So you have a lot more options than folks used to. And that's it. Some homework. Pages or problems 2, 6, and 8. I didn't have any homework out of the second chapter because again, I think it's good to talk about, but again, like we've said, they never use cover letters. Other people do. There is just not a one-size-fits-all approach for career planning, for resumes, for any of that stuff. On the materials section of Blackboard, you'll see these slides. So don't worry about copying them necessarily. You'll have them available to you.
Are these problems, are they to be written out and submitted, or?
Yeah, what we'll do is the time frame. Don't worry about it just yet because we're just getting started here. But there's the assignment section on Blackboard, and that's all we'll do electronically. So I spelled it out a little bit on the syllabus, but I'll put out a little bit more of a description. Are you guys familiar with submitting the assignments on Blackboard?
No, there's no class next week, right?
Next week for you guys
No.
is right. Yeah. So the time frame and on the homework too, it's not like you're getting ready to get to know. I have flexibility on that. I like people to get it done before the test. But we're only going to have homework for the first portion of the course, and then after that, it's going to be your homework's going to be more on your project. And your project is your financial plan type thing that's laid out a little bit better in the syllabus.
It was not like a black and white view.
No.
Before
No.
the test. Is the book for 20?
You will need the book. But there are options to get the book for $20 in a rental, right? So you can do that. But yeah, it will, there's going to be some things in course, whatever. I try not to speak too rigidly, and you will need to kind of review the book to keep yourself straight.
Your PowerPoint will be available on.
It is available, yeah. If you look in the materials section, it's under there. And I'll do more as things go on. This whole thing, I was I was trying to avoid having to take this trip to Georgia, so I had to do a bunch of prep work for that to try and stave that thing off, and was not able to. So on the flights tonight and stuff, I'll spruce up the blackboard a little bit. Question?
Is he gonna post these conversations on YouTube?
This one will be on YouTube. I don't know about the future ones. Typically not.
How are you gonna label it?
Oh, yeah. No, it'll be on the link. I'll embed it in the blackboard, on the materials. Yeah. I did this thing by distance learning last time, which was the automation stuff, the collaborate and the other things. We can work that out. And, you know, when on actual snow days or ice days or whatever it may be, we may have to do that. But, you know, it's just very dry if it's just strictly YouTube, because I've seen like lectures, for example, they go about 40 minutes long because I'm just racing through because there's like zero feedback, nobody's nodding their head, nobody, you know, and there's a lot of things too that I'll skip over, and, you know, kind of the quality control, you guys go, well, but wait a minute, and then, you know, we'll go back and talk about it. So I'm not going to make it a YouTube lecture, but yeah, there'll be a YouTube backup in case of weather or in case of, well, this should be a one-off event. So I don't want to, yeah, this was